Right now, you probably have Google Maps on your phone. You can find out exactly where you are down to the meter. You can get turn by turn directions to anywhere on the planet. You have never been truly lost in your life. Your ancestors had none of that. No maps, no compass, no roads, no idea what was on the other side of the next mountain range. And yet, they left. They packed up everything they owned, which wasn't much, and walked. Not to the next valley, not to the next river. Thousands of kilometers across deserts, glaciers, and open ocean into territory no human had ever seen. Scientists used to assume there was always a practical reason. The food ran out, a rival tribe pushed them out, the climate shifted and they had no choice. That explanation is clean, it's logical, and the evidence keeps punching holes in it. Because when researchers mapped the ancient migration routes against climate and resource data, they found something nobody expected. Some of the longest, most grueling journeys in human history led toward places with fewer resources, not more. People crossed the Arabian Peninsula during one of the driest periods in its history. They walked into the interior of Australia, which was even harsher then than it is now. They pushed up into Siberia, where winter temperatures dropped low enough to kill an exposed person in minutes. This wasn't desperation, something else was pulling them forward. About 72,000 years ago, a small group of humans, geneticists estimate it may have been just a few hundred people, crossed out of Africa and began moving northeast. The journey that followed took not years but generations. No single person completed it. You would walk your whole life and die somewhere in the middle, and your children would keep going, and their children after them, toward a destination none of them had ever seen and couldn't have described. By the time their descendants reached the eastern edge of Asia, roughly 20,000 years had passed. They kept going. Some turned south into what is now Australia. Some went north and crossed into the Americas. Eventually, their descendants stood on the southern tip of South America, the farthest point on Earth from where the journey began. The entire planet walked across on foot over tens of thousands of years without a single map. The obvious question is why, and the answer has almost nothing to do with survival. It goes much deeper than that. Right now, scientists think they've found part of the answer, and it's not in history books or ancient campsites. It's in your DNA. In 1999, geneticists identified something unusual about a gene called DRD4. This gene controls how your brain responds to dopamine, the chemical your brain releases when you encounter something new, something risky, something unknown. For most people, this system runs at a normal level. But there's a specific variant of this gene called DRD4 7R where the wiring is different. People who carry it need more. A new place, a new risk, a new horizon triggers a stronger response in their brain than it does in everyone else around them. And when researchers mapped this variant across the world, they found something that stopped them cold. The farther a population's ancestors had migrated from Africa, the more common DRD4 7R was among their descendants. People whose ancestors walked all the way to the tip of South America, to the islands of the Pacific, to the frozen edge of Siberia, they carry this variant at significantly higher rates than populations whose ancestors stayed put. The longest migrations in human history were made by people whose brains were literally wired to chase the unknown. Think about what that feels like from the inside. You're standing at the edge of a valley your tribe has lived in for generations. You know where the water is. You know where the animals go in dry season. You know every path, every shelter, every danger. And over the ridge, in the direction nobody has ever gone, you don't know anything. It could be wasteland. It could be death. But something in your brain doesn't sound an alarm. It leans forward. Not fear, pull. The same feeling you get right before something good happens, except it's pointing at the unknown instead of the familiar. That's not a decision. That's chemistry. The tribes that stayed were safer by any rational measure. They had established territory, reliable food sources, accumulated knowledge about the land. Every logical calculation said, don't go. And most people didn't. But some did. Every generation, a handful of people felt that pull stronger than the rest. And instead of suppressing it, they followed it. Here's what makes this stranger. These weren't outcasts. Studies of modern hunter gatherer groups show that carriers of DRD 4-7R often became the scouts, the traders, the ones sent ahead to find what was over the next ridge. Their restlessness wasn't a flaw, it was the role the group needed filled. But the gene is only part of the story, because nobody walked alone. And what happened inside those groups at night, around the fire, is what actually moved entire populations across the earth. For most of human history, there were no written records, no books, no maps passed down from generation to generation. If you wanted to know what was over the next mountain range, there was exactly one way to find out. Someone had to tell you. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying why human language evolved the way it did. His conclusion surprised a lot of people. Language didn't develop primarily to communicate practical information, where the food is, where the danger is. Other animals managed that with signals and calls. Language evolved for something far more specific. It evolved to transmit experience from one mind to another, to let one person describe something they had seen and make another person feel like they had seen it too. In other words, language evolved to move information across time and distance in a way nothing else could. And here's where it connects to migration. Neuroscientists at Princeton ran a study where they recorded brain activity in both storytellers and listeners during the same narrative. What they found was striking. When a story is told well, the brain of the listener begins to mirror the brain of the teller. The same regions activate, the same patterns fire. Your brain, listening to a description of a journey, activates some of the same circuits it would use if you were actually making that journey yourself. A story isn't just information, it's a simulation. Picture a camp 50,000 years ago. The fire is low, an old man is talking. He describes a river his father's father had crossed, 3 weeks' walk to the east. Water so clear you could see the bottom, fish so thick you could reach in and grab them. He has never seen this river himself. His father never saw it either. But he knows it the way you know something you've been told your whole life, as a fact, as a landmark, as a destination. Somewhere in that circle, a young man is listening. And when he falls asleep that night, he already knows where he's going. This is how entire populations moved without anyone ever making a conscious decision to migrate. Story by story, generation by generation, the destination traveled ahead of the people. The journey existed in language long before anyone took the first step. Dunbar called this the social brain hypothesis. The human mind didn't grow large to solve engineering problems or track animal behavior. It grew large to hold other people's experiences, to run simulations of places it had never been, to want things it had never seen. But there was one more force driving people forward, the darkest one. And it explains why some of the most important journeys in human history began not with curiosity, but with something being taken away. In most hunter gatherer societies, there was no prison. There were no chains, no cells, no guards. When someone broke the rules badly enough, stole from the wrong person, betrayed the group at the wrong moment, the punishment wasn't death. It was something the group considered worse. They made you leave. Exile. You were pushed out of the circle, past the firelight, into the dark. Alone. Without the group, survival odds dropped close to zero. No one to hunt with, no one to share food with, no one to watch your back at night. Exile was a death sentence delivered slowly, over days or weeks, in the form of absolute solitude. But some of them didn't die. Some of them walked. They had no choice but to move, because staying in the same territory meant running into the people who had expelled them. So they went further, into valleys no one had named, across rivers no one had crossed, and some of them found something: water, game, shelter, land that could support a small group. And eventually, they came back, not to the tribe that exiled them, but to others, with information, with a route, with a description of what was out there. The people the group threw out became the people who mapped the world. Geneticists have traced certain founding populations to extremely small groups, sometimes just a few dozen individuals. The genetic bottleneck is so narrow, it suggests these weren't planned migrations of whole tribes. They were small bands cut off from the main group, pushed to the edge, who kept going because turning back wasn't an option. You are here because someone, somewhere in your ancestry, was forced to walk into the unknown and survived it. Now think about your own life. Maybe you moved to a city where you didn't know anyone. Maybe you left a job, a relationship, a version of yourself that wasn't working anymore. Maybe you're reading this in a place you never expected to end up. That feeling of being pushed out, of losing the ground beneath you and having to find new ground, that isn't a modern problem. That is the oldest human experience there is. The man who took the first step into the Arabian desert 72,000 years ago didn't have a plan. He had no map, no destination, no guarantee of anything on the other side. He just had no good reason to stay. And every person alive on Earth today is his direct descendant. Not metaphorically, literally.